It's time to dive into the first sequel to Universal Soldier. No, not that one with Bill Goldberg. There's two made-for-TV movies before we even get to that special treat. Today we discuss Universal Soldier 2: Brothers in Arms, featuring the chaotic energy of one Gary Busey. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We talk about sci-fi movies. It's that simple. Today, we are continuing on with a franchise that we started a little while ago, and that is Universal Soldier, which means that today we have to do Universal Soldier 2: Brothers in Arms. Not Universal Soldier: The Return. Many people think that's the second one.
Hold on, we gotta stop the episode, Pete. I messed up.
I'm not falling for it.
Oh God, silly me.
I'm not falling for it. I know you watched the right movie, so we're not entertaining that idea. Yes. So believe it or not, there were two sequels, 2 and 3, that were made for TV. They premiered on the movie channel. It was a co-production between Canada and America with the same company that did the RoboCop TV movies, which led to the one-season RoboCop show. They were hoping for that lightning to strike again and get a Universal Soldier TV show ongoing.
Was the RoboCop TV series really lightning, or was that just like rubbing a balloon on your hair and getting a little...
relative speaking, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Not that it was successful in any way. I mean, it was cancelled after one season, David. What else do you need to know?
Right, exactly.
But let's not even get that far. Let's not even get to the TV show stage. It just got its TV movies. So today we're talking about Universal 2: Brothers in Arms, and there's definitely stuff that was planned for both movies, and that you can tell there's things that they're not going to get to till the third one. But it's not like one two-part or a two-part story. Like, there is definitely a lot of things that are just this one, and then we'll do some other things in the third one. So It's not like we're just getting to halfway through the story. There's just kind of like a bigger villain they're kind of teasing throughout that is clearly for the next one. But other than that, there's not much to say really. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into spoilers. And if you're enjoying the show, hit the like button, and you can support the show and get bonus shows over in Patreon. But I'll tell you more about that at the end. One of those shows, though, is a show called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things ever made. And I'm bringing that up because this would not be out of place on that show. It just so happens to be part of a franchise that we have started and will do maybe some later entries of on this show, so we had to put it here.
Yeah. How dare the... I mean, to be fair, specifically you, 100% make up the rules as to how this goes. You could easily have changed them. You could say, but we're not doing that this time. But you've held fast to this, which part of me appreciates. Part of me thinks good on you keeping to your rules here. Part of me wishes you just would have relented. You just would have said, nope, not going to do that.
Well, you'd have still been doing them. You'd just be doing them on Extra Reels instead.
Right, but I'd be doing them, and that would save me from doing a different bad movie. Now we're doubling up.
Okay, that's a fair point. No, what's the point of setting up my own rules if I'm not going to follow them? Like, I'm a stickler for rules, including the ones that I make, and...
Fair enough.
Here we are.
Fair enough.
So this is Universal Soldier 2: Brothers in Arms, which does have all the characters from the first movie. Different actors.
The characters, yes. The characters.
Everyone's been recast, but it does follow on. In fact, it even kind of recreates the end of the first movie for the opening titles to kick things off.
Yes, it does. And that was a bold move to have that happen with the previous ending still in my mind.
Honestly, I think what was really a bold choice for this movie is to have like maybe one scene that kind of counts as an action sequence towards the end, if that.
Yeah.
It's very light on those, which is very strange. That's a bold choice. Retconning everything that happened in the first movie by the end of the first act for some reason. That was also a really bold choice. We've got so much to talk about as far as choices go.
This movie is just the bravest movie to ever be made.
Yes, brave. That's the word I'd use for it. So, yes. I mean, I guess I'll just We'll get to plot and stuff when we get to spoilers. We'll just do some quick spoiler-free stuff. David, what did you think of Universal Soldier 2?
God, Pete, I've seen some bad movies before, and this is a movie. This exists. Here's the thing. And I kind of appreciate the casting in this. It's I'm gonna pronounce his last name wrong. Matt Battaglia, I don't know if it's soft or hard G, is taking over from Jean-Claude Van Damme as the lead, as Luke Devereaux. And the whole point of the character in the first movie is that he is somewhere between human and robot. But what that really means is a very stilted kind of wooden performance without a lot of emotion. And I thought we reached our peak with that, with Jean-Claude Van Damme's portrayal. I thought that was a very, very stilted performance from him, intentionally. I've never actually seen an enchanted piece of wood act before, but by God, Matt Battaglia just, chef's kiss, because I don't think I've ever once seen a single spark of emotion across his face throughout the entirety of this movie. Not a single change in inflection the entire time. He may as well have just been, honestly, I was about to say he may as well have been like a phone AI assistant, but they speak with more inflection than this guy does. So it's an insult to them to say that. Regardless, for the movie as a whole, it sucks. It's cheap. It felt like there were $1,000 left after they paid off the actors to show up, and even then, it's not like they got huge names. If you know anything about the Universal Soldier movies, it's in this weird middle ground where they assume that you know, but then they also go back against everything that they ended with. Like, they just go back and say, like, okay, you remember how this happened? Ignore that. We're doing something else now. But they remind you that it happened as well. So it's such a strange little place here of everything matters and yet nothing does at the same time. And then, like you said, there are 2 movies, and while you say that this is kind of its own story, I don't think there's anything here that can be charitably called a story. I think a couple events happen.
That's a separate conversation. I agree, there's barely any story in this. What I'm saying is that it's not just part 1 of a 2-part story.
I feel like it is, though. I don't feel like enough even gets close to happening here to say that this is not just part 1 of what they were planning on doing.
No, you misunderstand. You misunderstand me. This does not do enough to be part 1 of a 2-part story. This doesn't have enough to justify as that.
You're on the other side. Okay, no, I agree with that. Yeah, that's fair.
Right? So, because of that, it doesn't even feel like it is like, because when you watch like a 2-part, like, you watch a TV show and there's a 2-part episode, and you get to the end of the first one and you realize it's not going to wrap up, so there's a cliffhanger, right? Yeah. There's a pacing that comes along with that that's very different to a normal episode. And likewise, with a movie that's made like that, it can feel that way. If anyone who saw Across the Spider-Verse last year, or 2 years ago now, when that movie wraps up to its ending, you're like, oh, it's building, oh, to be continued. And you sort of like, right?
Yep.
This does not have that. It does not have that build and like, oh, we're at that pivotal point in the story. It kind of neatly wraps everything up, except for the fact that there's villains still around to do more stuff next movie. But it's not, it doesn't have that 2-part feeling to it. It barely has a 1-part feeling to it. That's kind of the problem. This is what I'm debating here. You're debating, well, they've left all this stuff out, but you're assuming that there's going to be all the stuff in the third movie.
Honestly, what this felt like to me was they finished this, and they didn't know whether or not they were going to get greenlit for a show or even a third movie. And they were just like, well, if we go to the show, then we'll go to the show. If we go to the movie, we go to the movie. It's going to be one way or the other. But then whatever happened on the back end, they ended up getting the third movie, and they're like, okay, we'll just wrap it all up there. Probably. I'm not saying they're actually going to wrap anything up, but that's the feeling I get from the way this ended. Well,
they debuted a month apart, so I'm pretty sure they shot them like back to back. I don't think it was
probably.
I don't think it was which is why I went in expecting it to feel like just a 2-part story, like a miniseries, and it doesn't even really, because TV pilots have more action than this does. Like, TV pilots have more intriguing story than this does. This is like the bottom of the barrel. Nothing is happening, and what little is happening is just kind of killing time. And Jesus, like, you want like the indie girl punk soundtrack of 1998 because I couldn't believe how many songs playing to like awkward slow motion moments were happening during this.
I was flashing back to early Smallville, where like they were trying to pimp the soundtrack at the same time.
Yeah, it's baffling. And on top of that, like the actual filming style here, there's a lot of awkward, like low frame rate, slow motion. There's like repeated moments with like quick track-ins. Like when I say quick, I don't just mean they move the camera quickly. They sped it up, so they've got like almost like a music video kind of feel to some of the moments. It's like people are walking around or bad guys are doing something, and you get all these weird little like. This is just so absurdly cheesy. Like this is what you've got here. You don't have a story. You have a bag of shitty camera tricks that you're trying to give us. Anyway, what I will say though, if you were hoping, oh, is it so bad that it's good? It's not really. It's mostly just really boring. However, there's a shining angel that does give me a couple of moments worth praising, and that angel is named Gary Busey, who is in this, and like it's really just like one scene at the start and then one scene towards the end where he really made me laugh. But he does, right? He is the complete opposite of the main actor. He is too much personality. He is inflecting far too much, and that is the beauty of Gary Busey.
I was a little concerned there because I do think that Gary Busey is uncharacteristically reserved through most of this movie. He does have more going on, but he is not what I expect from Busey. But when you say one at the beginning, one at the end, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I exactly agree. Yes.
His opening scene really got me hopeful that I was going to think this was like not good but funny bad. Like I was like, oh, if this movie's as crazy as this little scene was, I may get on board with it. And then it proceeded to just be a slog of tedium for the entire rest of the whole thing. So, yeah, I do not recommend.
Nah.
It's on YouTube if you really want to go watch it, but do not recommend.
I was kind of hoping, because I saw the runtime, I was like, okay, hour and a half. That's mercifully short. That is a very brief time. I was hoping that it was going to be in the sort of TV cadence where I know it's made for Movie Channel, and I don't know if Movie Channel has like commercial breaks at all. But I was hoping for that.
I assume not, because it's like a sister channel to Showtime. But I mean, I don't know for sure.
But I was hoping for that thing where they would like build around the commercial breaks. Like it would build to like a little mini crescendo going into the commercial break and then pay off. But that would require there to be some sort of tension or action or intrigue.
Structure.
Yeah, any of this. But no, it did not provide.
No, it's a slog. It's got a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 2.9 on IMDb. These are the numbers we're working with. I mean, it's not a lot of reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, admittedly, but so it's easier to get a 0 when you've only got 7 reviews. But still, it's a.
Can we get qualified on that? Can we add ours to the critic consensus?
Oh, I would love nothing more. I don't know if the movies have like the equivalent of OpenCritic, which is more open than Metacritic, because that's what video games have got. I wonder if there's a.
That's probably just IMDb.
Probably yes. Anyway, spoilers. I mean, you shouldn't care though. I mean, let me make it this like this movie's terrible. You should not give a crap about spoilers. But we have done the format. We have done the spoiler-free section. Where we've not given anything away.
The only thing I'll say is that this picks up immediately after the previous movie.
Yes.
This is not something where it's like, oh, some time has passed. Like, we open with a news broadcast that specifically says, hey, remember in the last movie how the reporter is on the run because they framed her for murder? Still there, still on the run. We didn't solve any of that, which I'm pretty sure we had a discussion at the end of the last movie of like, how did she clear her name? And it turns out, in the continuity of this film, she didn't.
We're not gotten to that part yet.
Yeah.
We get different actors playing the parents. The farm's kind of similar but different. I mean, even when they recreate the fight scene from the end, it feels like they stick to one little like square of land because they don't really have as much to work with. But he says, "You're discharged, Sarge." We get the cheesy one-liner, which
also. I this is absolutely neither here nor there, but later on in this movie, probably like first 20 minutes, they show a map of the U.S. because they're trying to still track down Luke.
Sure.
And they show that this farm is in Wyoming, where I'm like 200% sure it was in Louisiana. It was in the French Quarter, right?
I don't remember.
I am like incredibly certain that that was the case, that we got confirmation of that, but randomly they just show a map of like, oh, he's in Wyoming, sir. No. Why? That's just something you can watch the movie and figure out.
I'm fact checking. Hold on.
Yeah, because remember, they got that accent with them, and it was like, oh, okay, they're in the French Quarter. That's why they got the Devereaux farm down there in Louisiana. And then all of a sudden, just this map shows like GPS information, zooms in on southwest Wyoming, and it's like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, hold on. They're going to be awkward. They're going to tell me where they shot all these scenes, not where they actually.
Yeah.
You know, where they're meant to be set, because that doesn't really help me. All right, never mind.
Yeah, I'll see if I can look up.
Your logic makes sense. But I whatever. I mean, that was the least of my problems. But the bigger problems I had is that when we get introduced at the start of the movie to these soldiers who are arriving for a secret meeting with some general, and they mention, oh, isn't that General so and so? Wasn't he like discharged? Like, wasn't he a bad guy? And so, yeah, I thought he was, but here he is, and he's working with Gary Busey, who just saunters out of this helicopter in slow motion with his leather jacket. He comes up, and Gary Busey says, hey, you three are the best of the best. You're esteemed soldiers. That's why you're here. This is the start of your next mission. And then pulls out an Uzi and shoots them all. And then says, put them on ice. They're our next Universal soldiers.
You ignored my favorite bit.
What was the
favorite bit from that is after he shoots them all, he turns, and there's a single tear rolling down his cheek. I'm like, what the hell is this character? Oh, God. By the way, I found on the Wikipedia page from the Universal Soldier synopsis, Devereaux and Roberts head to the Devereaux family farm in Louisiana.
Okay, there you go.
Just check the wiki, guys. Come on.
To be fair, it was 1998. The wiki probably didn't exist.
Then check the source material. You had a DVD. I know you did, because you recreated the scene it was a part of.
Dear. Yeah, I mean, even the general's like surprised that this is what they were doing here with these soldiers. But it turns out though that this is like the B team has been like, okay, this is the B team. We've recruited who's going to be in the B team, and then Gary Busey gets on the phone with a mysterious man, maybe in Washington or somewhere, right? Who's in the shadow. It's called Burt Reynolds, but he's Well,
no, they show the Capitol building. He's definitely in Washington.
Oh, sure, right. Yeah. But there's in shadows, so we don't, we can tell it's Burt Reynolds, but they're hiding it in terms for cinematic effect.
Pretending like we don't see that mustache for any particular period of time.
And Burt Reynolds obviously has been in esteemed things. Obviously, this is that part of his career where he's doing shitty little projects like this. And he sounds half drunk. He sounds bored. Like, some of his lines are kind of slurred. It's just whatever. But Gary Busey saying, hey, we've recruited the B team, right? What happened to the other squad? Is that, there's been a complication. And then that complication seems to turn out to be just the entire first movie. Oh, we lost contact with that team. We don't know what's going on. 2 of the Unisols are missing.
Right.
I'm like, didn't they all burn alive? Like, what's that part of the plot?
God, I was so confused at the beginning because, like, I don't know how far to get into it without being spoilers, but they essentially activate a program that makes the first movie completely irrelevant.
This was the big thing I was going to build up to, because this is the thing that pissed me off the most, is that 5 minutes later after this, right, there's a couple of scenes of looking at Veronica, right, the journalist from the first movie, where she's trying to teach him to kiss, because they are just a romantic thing now. Right, we'll get into that. But a couple of scenes later, he's lying in bed, and they just turn on a button. And like at their headquarters, which is in a ship for some reason, they turn on a button on the computer, and he wakes up like a zombie and just basically starts walking, making his way to where they are. He just turns on like a drone and starts. He takes the car. Notably, Veronica says he took my car, and I'm like, you drove here in a stolen police car. Your car's not here, Veronica.
That's right.
What are you talking about? So that's another little thing that doesn't add up. But yes, you're right. This whole homing, like, he just turns, like, he forgets to, because the whole point of the first movie is that by the end, he's kind of regained some autonomy. He's regained who he is. He's fighting for what he believes in.
I'm remembering a quote here of, I am alive.
Yes. And they repeat that in the recreation at the start as well.
Yeah.
Right? That was the whole point, right? It's just your RoboCop. What's your name, son? Murphy. Dun, 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 dun. Right? He's achieved his individuality, and at the start of this movie goes, no, flick of a switch, I must return home, I am I am GR44, I must go back to base.
God damn it. It's like the best way to ruin all goodwill that you could possibly have done is just saying, like, remember everything you liked about this movie that worked out? Didn't happen. Or at the very least did happen, but we don't care.
Yeah, so the opening act of this movie, once this kicks off, is she is trying to follow him and find him as a journalist, and he is like going back to the Unisol, and it ends up just leading to a lot of recreations of things that happened in the first movie, where she's sneaking around their base, and he's like one of the Unisols, and like things obviously go a little bit differently, but it's just like, this is a much shittier version of scenes we already got in the first movie, and to top it all off, when they get a hold of him again, they wipe his memory.
Yep.
So everything that's happened, all of his character development is actually just completely gone.
I look, from a TV pilot perspective, I get it. I understand. You want to set up this series, and you want the entire arc of his character over the course of the series to be him becoming human and like getting that personality back. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. The fact that it didn't come from a TV series and that it's just a standalone movie now makes it just annoying. It makes it just like it feels like the writers and directors had no respect for anything that they were trying to adapt here and just did whatever they wanted to.
But that's the paradox. So many shitty direct-to-TV, direct-to-video sequels of the era just remade the first movie, or just loosely said it was the same character but nothing matched up. This goes out of its way to canonize that it's taking place right after the first movie, goes out of its way to reference several things, but repeatedly like ignores details and contradicts itself and contradicts things the first movie said. It's like one or the other movie, you can't have it both ways.
It honest to God feels like the writer watched the movie and then waited 6 months and then wrote the script. Like they just like kind of forgot some of the details, but they remembered some of the big things that they wanted to do with it. But there's just this gap here of, I feel like this is in line with things, but I'm not going to bother to check.
Because at least if it was kind of a semi-remake where it was like, okay, semi-remake, there's a sequel planned, and then it might lead to a TV show. At least you go, okay, it's a shittier version of the movie, but if they want to start off where the relationship between Luke and Veronica is at that place that it was at the start of the movie, where he didn't understand anything and she was trying to get something out of him. At least if you started from scratch again, it would make sense that we were starting there. But this movie spends half of its runtime building to getting back to square zero, and then starts doing things from there, like whatever it actually wants to do. And what little that is, to be fair, as well. But like, it actually spends half of its runtime just chipping away at everything the first movie already did to reset everything. It takes the time to do it. And it's not entertaining. It's not fun to watch. It doesn't make any sense. And what's so weird about it is that they have all these little scenes on the way, like where he's on a train to Chicago, because that's where the ship is, where the Unisol base is. And he has a whole thing with like a little girl who tries to bond with him, and like he's holding her teddy bear.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and it's doing all this stuff where I'm like, oh, because at this point I don't realize, because honestly at this point in the movie I hadn't realized that he was just a drone at this point going back to the base. I thought it was still him, but he was like he was following the signal that he could sense because he wanted to try and like, you know, take them out, put an end to it once and for all, whatever it may be. And I thought this bonding with the little girl was like still him being like more human and so on. But then, you know, it turns out that none of this matters. And then they did a whole thing where his memory's wiped. And just to skip to one little thing at the end, there's one little line at the end that clearly says that he's remembered everything because he references a conversation he had with Veronica from before his mind was wiped. And they don't even react to it. They don't even acknowledge it. It's just there. Because he does a knock-knock joke, which was one of the things that she tried to teach him during the kissing scene. She tried to teach him knock-knock jokes.
I didn't even consider that. I didn't even consider the fact, like, by that point, I had completely just like, yeah, okay, whatever's happened. Somewhere in the middle of the movie, I just forgot that he had his mind wiped, and it's probably once he sees character B, who we're not going to reveal yet, but yeah, no, it's so poorly put together. There's no part of this that was interesting to me, and I think what's worse is pacing-wise. like I kept expecting there to be a scene. There was going to be a scene that was action and like got me engaged. And by the time we hit the end of the movie, it just kind of stopped. The biggest action scene they had is not even as big as the smallest action scene from the first movie.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
know you could say, oh, made for TV budgets, but like, you know what you need to do to make an action-oriented show / movie.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
work around that.
This like, you know, like Xena was on at this time doing action scenes. You know, like it's a couple of years before 24, but it's not that far away from 24 being a thing. Like,
I will actually jump in there. I looked up the writer just to see what he has done. His biggest thing is he did the screenplay and story for Demolition Man.
oh, I quite enjoyed Demolition Man.
Yep.
Well,
and then he did one of the Crow. Actually, it looks like a Crow TV series. I didn't even know that was a thing. And then a whole bunch of nothing. And then he started doing episodes of like CSI, Hawaii Five-0, 24, stuff like that.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
About right. And the director, likewise, if you look up his stuff, he's been doing TV episodes all the way up to 2023, and some of it really well known shows like The Expanse, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Vikings, Heroes Reborn. Less exciting to say, but but still a wide variety, some of which are very good shows. So clearly he's he's good enough to come in and just work in the confines of the style that's been defined for a show. Like he can come in and do an episode, because he did 12 episodes of The Expanse. I love that show. There is not a shred of like that quality in this. So, it just is what it is. It is, but I guess that makes sense because he did a Smallville episode actually, I'm looking down the list.
Oh my.
But
it's a good one.
Clearly he's a TV director, and that's why he did these TV movies and had no aspirations of making it anything more than what it was. Yeah.
Oh, he did the first Red Kryptonite episode. The one with Sassy Clark.
Oh my. Yeah, I guess we found something that he's made that's worse than that episode of Smallville.
There you go. No, I don't really have anything more to say without getting into spoilers. The only other plot
I thought we were in spoilers already, to be honest.
Are we in spoilers? Cool.
I thought I'd give the spoiler warning. But,
I remember you saying spoilers. I just didn't hear the whole big shebang of like you've been warned and all that.
Okay, you have been warned. Spoilers from this point on.
All right. So let's talk about this new thing of turns out he went to war because he had a brother.
Yes, a brother who was much older and had died when he was only like 10 or something like that. And it's when Luke turned 18, he went to Vietnam. Okay, right. You'll probably remember some Vietnam history more than I do. How long was Vietnam going on? Because
How old do you think I am, Pete?
On his tombstone, right, we see the brother's tombstone, and it said he died in 1958 or 1959. Had Vietnam started by that year?
According to Google, the Vietnam War was a long and costly conflict that took place from 55 to 75.
Okay. I'll be honest, I didn't think it started till the early 60s, but fair enough. That's just me not knowing my history. Fair enough.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think that's when it like most took in. I think for the first like 5 or so years, they were like, we're going to get in, we're going to do our America thing and just kick ass, and then we're going to get out. And it's only after 5 years past, they're like, oh, this isn't going to be like that other war.
Yes, well, when his brother wakes up, we'll get to how that happens in a minute, but when his brother wakes up, he's like, did we win the war? And she's like, Vietnam? Nah, not really.
We won a few since then, and I'm like, when?
Yeah,
Which
that's what I
ones?
was thinking.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, the Gulf War?
Yeah.
I guess.
Do we technically win those? I feel like those just kind of stopped.
I mean, they got the oil.
Yeah.
I guess.
A win's a win. Take it.
The goal was achieved. So we'll get to so the whole brother thing is like, okay, they set up the brother, we get this cheesy flashback of like Luke as a little kid like waving his brother off at the train as his brother's getting on the train to go off to war. And he idolized his big brother. It's a whole thing. I got very confused though by some of the logic of his brother's conditions here, because so the whole thing is that when she follows, because there's a whole thing where she follows Luke, she's driving across country to try and get to him, and she actually gets to the train station as Luke gets off the train, but we get the slow motion kicks in as he's walking with like 3 guys in suits. He's clearly with the bad guys, and she's like in shock watching as like super discount Michelle Branch starts playing on the soundtrack, and they milk this moment for like 500% of how long it should have lasted.
Oh, absolutely. The version I watched on YouTube, this part was copyrighted. This part, the audio was removed. So all I heard was like the intro notes to the song, and then everything went quiet. And I was just watching people's mouths to see if anyone spoke. I don't think a single word was said this entire time, so I didn't miss a thing.
It is literally slow motion, Dutch angles, low frame rate slow motion at that. Like, they didn't plan for a lot of this slow motion. They slowed down some footage. And
that also bothers me with the super fast tracking shots as well. Because the way that those are used, it doesn't feel like that was the plan. It felt like they were supposed to do this slow crane shot around and like move there. And it's only once they got to the editing booth, they're like, we have an upbeat song to play here and we need to pick up the pace. And they just sped it up.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like shit. I mean, that's just the only way to say it. So he ends up back in the program. His mind is wiped. There's like a doctor character who conveniently disappears halfway through the movie because he still has to be around for 3. So he just sort of gets fired by Busey, but the doctor's still working for Burt Reynolds at the end, so he's still around. He's going to reignite the whole Unisol program for movie number 3, so don't worry about that. But that's going on. So Veronica sneaks here. She takes down the dumbest security guard, right? This woman soldier who's supposed to be guarding the boat, and Veronica's behind her, and she's like, don't turn around or I'll shoot. And she's like, yeah, bitch, please, I don't believe you. And she turns around, Veronica just sprays her in the face with pepper spray or mace or whatever. And gives her a couple of quick hits. She's down and out. But I laughed out loud though, because when one of the things she says to her before she turns around is like, I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. Yeah. No, it wasn't actually that line. It was your clothes, your gun, and your ID, I think was the actual line. But I couldn't help but hear the Arnold line from T2.
It had to be. It had to be intentional. There's no way it wasn't.
But she steals her military uniform. When I say military, I just mean camouflage overalls. And, throws them on. And she starts sneaking around. And there's because this is the big ship that, apparently the truck, the fancy truck from the first movie, this came from this ship, seemingly. Because this is where all their failed experiments are, dead soldiers that couldn't quite come back, and she's exploring. There's drawers just full of ears and eyeballs and shit like that. Which I never got the impression they were Frankensteining these things together sometimes, but I guess if someone loses something, they've got replacement parts.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the things where they show that, the body's able to repair itself thanks to cold. That's just a thing it can do. Also, they've got magic spray now, which I assume is just to cool them down. But
is it just diluted liquid nitrogen you do?
Yeah, I feel like you just turn one of the keyboard cleaning dust cans upside down and spray that. That's all you need. Yeah. But no, it's full of body parts, and like you said, there's also a bunch of, the stereotypical sci-fi tubes that are holding bodies up in liquid, and they're showing some with their heads blown off, and all I could think is you thought that was worth saving? The soldier with the head blown off? Okay.
Neck down's a lot of useful body parts in case they need them.
I mean, that's fair, but then you don't save the thing. You just chop them up, put them on ice, and don't keep them all in one piece there.
But of course, she ends up stumbling into a sign that says Eric Devereaux, and she just wait a minute, and she cleans defrosts the glass a little bit, and she sees the face.
Clicks the little button that starts the video playback of him being prepped, because of course they have a video playback.
This is a museum apparently with little informational tablets that ready to display stuff.
Over here you can see how the dinosaurs died if you just press that one.
And it basically so this video implies that he didn't take to some of the tech and the programming that the other Unisols did. Now in this scene, I thought that because of the way he wakes up on the operating table and starts strangling the doctors and stuff, I thought, they can't get him to be this, mindless drone. He's always going to wake up with his emotions and whatever.
But he's got the tech.
Yes. That's how I read it, because he's still been resuscitated. He still came back to life, clearly. So some of it's still working.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the movie, when he is killed, Luke starts spraying cold stuff on his bullet wounds, and Veronica says, no, Luke, he's not like you. His body didn't take to the treatments. He's really gone. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He came back to life. Now, maybe what they're suggesting here is that he never actually died and they just froze him. Like he was still alive when they got him. Like they said he was dead to the parents and whatnot, but maybe they just put him on ice. So he's been cryogenically frozen, but he never actually technically died. But they never actually told us that. They never gave us that. No. I still thought he came back to life, just like Luke did. It's just that some parts of the programming to make him a obedient little drone soldier didn't work. However, all of a sudden at the end, no, we can't bring him back. And all I can think is, to be fair to Luke here, his entire worldview right now is that him and his brother have come back to life already. Why wouldn't he think that he could do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be tanking bullets like crazy if I saw that every other person in this thing was able to tank bullets like that. Yeah, no, it's such a poorly explained bit, because the way the video portrays it, it seems like he went through the entire process and the only thing he missed was the memory erasing goo.
Yes.
Like, that's it. That's the only part that, and then, so they put him on ice because he was too much of a threat, which, if you're going to put freaking Dolph Lundgren in the program, and yet somehow this guy is too much of a problem, I feel like his entire character should have been hyper macho aggressive, like willing to kill anybody. But instead, he's the chillest dude out of the entire cast.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. We didn't even talk about the fact that we had a recast Dolph Lundgren at the start of the movie for the recreation of the ending. And like throughout the movie, they keep saying, okay, we've found GR44 and he's on his way back. Oh, we've got him. Where's 13? We don't know, sir. Oh, turns out there's a black box inside Luke. So they take that out, and that's actually the footage at the start of the movie that we were seeing during the opening titles. Was the
Strangely enough, it's all in the same camera angles as the movie. At one point, Luke sees himself through his own black box.
Very, very strange, yes. And eventually they see it, and Gary Busey's actually kind of amused by it, because he's like, "Oh, that's some good gore there. Yeah, he killed him. Oh, that's a boy." So one of the big things about the movie up to this, because we're about halfway through at this point, right? When we're talking about all this stuff, is that there's no momentum, because, like, other than just vaguely alluding to, oh, we've got a meeting with potential partners, we don't even know what the villains are, like, doing, what their goal is, what they're up to.
Yeah. There's a single line somewhere in here, it probably is around the halfway point, where Busey basically tells the head doctor, we've lost our government funding, and therefore we're going private. We're turning the Universal Soldiers into mercenaries. And the doctor takes great umbrage with that, because that would be going too far. Screw the rest of playing God. Mercenaries? That's illegal. But yeah, that's Gary Busey's whole bit, is that he's basically just trying to get these Universal Soldiers up and running so he can sell them off to some random weapons dealer he's got on speed dial.
Which is forgetting, by the way, that in the first movie they established that group was already off the book. Like, they weren't actually, like, they were kind of lying to the government about what they were doing. They weren't supposed to actually be doing what they were doing.
Yeah,
so.
I think the Universal Soldier group was public because they, like, talked to the press and said, like, oh yes, our Universal Soldier's doing great. But it's the whole bringing them back from the dead part that was kept secret. Yes,
from the government as well. Yeah, like, that was just a complete lie about what they were doing.
So now, despite the fact that a week ago this was a highly public governmental team with a huge success rate, they lost funding in the meantime, and also they're switching over to being mercenaries.
Yes.
Cool. Just want to make sure I was clear on how stupid this was.
Yes. So, yeah, she wakes up Eric Devereaux, and he, like, honestly, the performance here as he's, like, waking up and he's having, like, these weird little PTSD flashbacks to Vietnam, like, the faces he's pulling and the way that he's sort of holding his arms out, I'm like, director, couldn't you have, like, told him to not look goofy? Was that not an option?
I honestly, at this point, I was fine with it. I thought that this was, like, the best acting we've gotten thus far. Because it's I just think back to how Dolph Lundgren was, like, going insane in the last one, and I'm like, yes, good, go crazy.
Are you forgetting the single tear on Gary Busey's eye?
Look, that single tear deserves all the awards, but the man who shed it, I'm not sure yet, because that was the only part out of him that I've been interested in so far.
Yeah, and so, like, he's like, hey, so who are you? And she's like, oh, I'm friends with your brother. It's like, where's my brother? Never even, like, really, like, it feels like there should be a scene. I know obviously it's established that he understands that time has passed because he asks about winning the war and whatnot, and she makes a couple of references. But it feels like the important part that we should get to see is the part where she says, "Oh, by the way, your brother's a 30-year-old man now." like that feels like an important thing to say when the last time he saw his brother, he was like 10.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I honestly, the kind of dynamic I was looking for here, and it's strange that it's kind of reversed, but it's the Captain America, Bucky / Winter Soldier thing I was looking for. I think that Eric is much more the Captain America type, more lighthearted, willing to, he's not indoctrinated into the system yet, so he's able to go out and do good. And then obviously you have Luke, who's already been mind controlled at this point, back indoctrinated into the team, given more memory wiping goo. So he'd be much more the Winter Soldier aspect. And
hey, to be fair, this predates the idea of the Winter Soldier in Marvel.
It does technically, and not Captain America, mind you.
No, of course not. No,
yeah,
and even Bucky, like Bucky and Captain America both existed for long before this. But the story that turned Bucky into the Winter Soldier was like early to mid 2000s.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It was right around the time that Jason Todd came back as well. Because I remember that was like everything happening at once of just undoing all of continuity.
Right. Yeah.
But no, the problem that I have with it though is that's what I was expecting, and like the only thing that happens is they manage to steal another guard's clothes. He then manages to walk into the main room and he gets caught out by the guards. And when Luke sees him, he just snaps out of it.
Well, let's not gloss over the line, "the jig is up." When they get caught, that's what he says. And she's like, "No one says jig anymore." Like that's like a plot point.
As she then follows through with 300 other 90s slang terms.
Yeah. They've just basically been walked out under, guard in front of the Unisols, who are all like suited up now, have got their eyepieces on. Which, by the way, the poster for this has Eric in the eyepiece thing, and he never wears it in this movie. I think he's going to wear it in the next movie, which is going to make the whole he can't be brought back thing even more stupid when he's brought back next time. But yeah, we'll see.
I'm sure there'll be like some throwaway line of him just being like, "Oh, because he died for real this time, but he didn't die for real before. Now he's able to be indoctrinated," which makes you just wonder, why didn't they just shoot him?
To be fair, we don't know for sure that he didn't die for real the last time. We've retconned that in to try and explain the plot hole.
You know what? I'm pretty sure that the filmmakers should thank us for that. I think that they should thank us for trying to make sense of this stupid-ass continuity.
So Luke's watching them be threatened, and they're going to like use Eric for parts, but hey, just kill the reporter. We don't need her for anything.
You mentioned the Heroes Reborn or whatever. I think it's Gary Busey who says the line of like kill the girl. No, sorry, save the girl, kill the soldier or something like that. And I'm like, that sounded awfully like the hero save the cheerleader, save the world sort of thing.
Yeah, but that's the opposite of what he's told to do.
Yeah, I know. It just sounded somewhat similar.
Okay.
Like especially coming so close after that Terminator 2 line or the Terminator line, I was like, wait a minute, hold on. That sounds awfully familiar there.
Yeah, but of course, before they get shot, Luke, fires his shot at the gun, and a crappy fist fight kind of starts in the truck. Which, by the way, this truck, which has now left the boat and is on the road, right when this is all playing out. If you want to see a good example of how the budgets went down from the first movie to the second movie, look at the fancy truck that expanded in the first movie and it looks super high tech, and then look at this, which is just a semi.
It's just a 2-trailer semi. Yeah. There's nothing special about it.
But yeah, so basically, during this, I assumed Luke had all of his memories back. That like seeing his brother, that triggering the memory of his brother, would brought all of his memories back, because the way he was interacting with Veronica and like grabbing her and saying we have to jump, and he jumps off with her. It's not until like 2 scenes later when they're on their own where she turns around and says, "You don't remember me, do you?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, what?
Nah,
so he's just not going to remember then until he suddenly does, apparently later in the movie. All right.
Every scene of this movie just makes me more frustrated with it, either because of what we already know is in continuity, or what the movie sets up as this is probably the path we're going to take. Oops, never mind, doing something else.
Well, let's keep in mind this part here, right? So they jump off the truck's still moving for a bit, but Eric, he's a little bit further behind, so he doesn't quite make it out. One of the Unisols grabs him, and they pull them back in. It's a whole thing, right? A couple of Unisols are told to follow looking Veronica. They're firing guns at them, and then eventually Gary Busey or whoever says, "Hey, call them back in. We've got a tracker on him anyway. It doesn't matter. We'll just get him later. Plus, we've got his brother. He'll want to come back for him." But all that leads to is Veronica takes Luke to a barn somewhere and says, "Hey, there's a tracker on the back of your leg. I've done this before. Don't worry. I'm going to take it out." And then she can't, and she's like, "No, you better do it." And I'm like, couldn't you have at least told him where it was? He just seems to know where to cut, even though it's not. He's not meant to remember any of this. So
no, he definitely remembers it, but he doesn't remember it because that would be inconvenient. But then, as we also see immediately afterwards, he kind of remembers kissing her, but then doesn't remember. But he reaches out for her lips, and she's like, "What is this? What's going on?"
Mm-hmm. So while this is going on, while they're like driving around, hitchhiking, and stealing someone's camper, a newlywed couple have their RV stolen by the main two characters.
Yep.
And they pick up a hitchhiker who I recognize. The actor popped up in Urban Legend and a few other things. He's got a memorable face.
Yeah, he seemed very familiar, but I couldn't tell you where I knew him from.
Yeah, he's definitely popped up in a few things throughout the 90s and 2000s. While this is going on, there's a couple of important things that happen with the bad guys. One is that Gary Busey bullies the general who's controlling the Unisols, right? Because he's like, "Hey, the Unisol's going to answer to me now." And the general's like, "No, I have tactical command." He's like, "What is that?"
Just fancy words for like, "You're a civilian, dude. Get out of here."
And Gary Busey grabs his arm, twists his wrist, and then starts just punching his like wrist or his hand and saying, "What's that? Who's in charge?" And he punches it. "Who's in charge? Tell me who's in charge." And he keeps punching it until
just imagine him giving him like a wet willy at this point. Like, it just seems so bullying, not even like threatening.
Yeah, it's just like really, it's mostly bullying, but just with a little bit more violence than actual like brotherly bullying, right? Until eventually the general can't take it anymore. He says over the comms, "Unisols, there's been a change of command. You'll now answer to Gary Busey." And Gary Busey's like, "You've been relieved of your duties, sir," and then shoots him and kills him. And then he looks over to the scientist, nerdy guy who's been around, and says, "Hey, put him on ice. Maybe he'll be useful like in his next life." And I'm like, okay, the running gag that Gary Busey just kills everyone and then says they can be a Unisol now is actually quite funny to me. Like, I wish they played with that a bit more.
I would. What I really wanted out of this, of Gary Busey's character, is that he's brought in as the guy who has to try to fix this mess. The mess that's left over after the first movie, he's brought in. He doesn't know a thing about how the system works, how the Unisols is, but he gets results, damn it. That's what I wanted. Ultimately, not really there. It just kind of more so feels like he's somehow wormed his way into this position, and he keeps on just taking more and more power by shooting people.
Yes. Also, they keep talking about how their funding's down, which felt like just an explanation as to why there's not more extras like running this place.
Oh no, Pete, that's the actors. The actors are saying the funding is down.
that was outtakes that just worked into the plot of the movie.
Yes,
okay, very good.
Absolutely.
Very good. The other big thing happens with the villains here is that the buyers or the people they're meeting with to like possibly purchase the Unisols show up, and it turns out to be a terrorist because like the scientist guy's like, "Hey, that's so and so," and Gary Busey turns and goes, "You're terrorists, good." And I'm like, okay, and he walks over to these three guys who have just got off a private jet, and he's like, "Yes, here's your arms," and like, "Wait, we're here to buy guns." Like, no. This is the future in biological warfare. The Universal Soldier. Give me your weapon. And then he shoots one of the Unisols, and the Unisol gets back up, and he blabbers on for a minute. I kind of zoned out while he was talking, to be honest.
It's great, because he says, "Give me your weapon." And he shoots this guy, mind you, who's wearing body armor. Like, he's wearing actual armor. He shoots this guy. Guy goes down to his knees, but is still clearly alive. And he says, "See, you can check. Real bullets, real blood." And I'm like, first and foremost, dude, you took their gun. They would know if it's real bullets. Well, yeah, so I thought that was just stupid outright.
Yeah, I thought that was the point of taking his gun. Is like, hey, you know this isn't going to be fake. So
right, exactly. And then real blood, like, yeah, okay, but he was wearing body armor. This guy just comes over and says, "Wow, there is a hole there. Guess he should be dead." As opposed to, how much did the body armor take in? Maybe it's just sitting like a centimeter under the surface.
Anyway, they're impressed. They want the Unisols.
Stupidly.
Yes. And they get a briefcase, they pour a bunch of diamonds as the payment in there, and Gary Busey says, I guess we were engaged. And he's like, yeah, for better or worse. And then Gary Busey, not 10 seconds later, turns around and says, yeah, it's definitely for worse. Unisols, annul the marriage. And then they just kill all of the terrorists. And it's like, and he turns to the scientist and goes, what, did you really think I'd do business with scum like that? Like, no, you just stole their diamonds, all right?
You know, it's weird, because this is kind of the sort of thing that, like, post 9/11, I could see, of just like, I may be evil, but even I don't work with terrorists. But being in 1998, it's like, why does he have this standard? Why does he care?
Yeah. Also, the terrorists were like they look like they're from like Eastern Asia, which it's not typically where movies would say that's where terrorists come from.
Yeah,
but
look, they are Indonesia's greatest threat. Sure, why not?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all the choices are a little bit baffling, but yeah. So basically, this entire thing that we've been hearing about throughout several scenes about this meeting coming up, we've got buyers, and that's going to advance the plot forward. Turns out, nope, he was just going to betray them the second after they handed over the money, and that's it. Nothing new really is happening because of this.
Again, I could understand it if we got a scene that was Gary Busey saying something like, oh, I'm not giving up this sort of power, like this is the real path or something like that. But no, it just seems like he's just going to keep running a con. He's just going to be pulling up buyers, killing them, and just saying, all right, who's next? Who wants to buy these crazy strong things?
Yep, that seems to be what's happening. And then the plan. Luke,
can we back up just a little bit here? So you mentioned him, this actor. As they're driving this camper, they stop and pick up a hitchhiker.
Yes.
And he has a guitar, because we need a little humanizing moment where he plays the guitar and we see Luke is like kind of trying to sing along. I think it's an interesting moment. It's not done well, but I can see the thought behind it that would have made it good. And then they tell him, we'll give you $100 if you do this very specific thing for us, which results in the plan.
Yes. So the actor, just for anyone who's wondering who we're talking about, Julian Richings, he was actually in Man of Steel, so he's been in stuff. I mean, that was over a decade ago now, but still relatively recently compared to this.
I mean, it's not like a major, it's one of the Kryptonians that just like shows up for a few minutes.
But he's been popping up in a lot of things over the years. He obviously doesn't know how dangerous this thing is that he's about to do, but he basically drives this camper into like this empty tarmac where the truck is, because of course it's got a TV budget, so everything's an empty tarmac, a warehouse or something like that. Everything's
the warehouse budget. That's all we need. Also, much earlier on, I think we forgot to mention that as they were walking through a field before they stole the RV, Gary Busey popped over Luke's comms, because he still had access to that, and said, hey, go to this location in 2400 hours or else we're going to kill your brother.
Oh, yes. I think I missed that line, to be honest, but whatever.
But that's the whole reason they knew where to go. They were expecting a meeting here. Everything was going on.
I mean, at this point, it had so many plot holes, I wasn't even thinking about how they know where to go. So, anyway, so this guy drives the camper in, seemingly on his own, does a little circle around him, and Gary Busey's like, who the hell are you? And he's like, oh, I'm just lost or whatever. Oh, the truck won't start.
Yeah, he's like, oh, they told me to turn left back there, but now I'm lost. And Busey, credit to his character, immediately says, this is a trap, everyone fan out. Like, this is absolutely Luke pulling something on us.
Which begs the question, how did Luke and Veronica were led to believe we're in this camper still, or at the very least, if they're not in the camper to begin with, maybe they sneak up. Like, either way, the fact that they're on alert and they're actually looking for like anyone sneaking around makes it ridiculous that this happens. But while this is playing out as a distraction, Luke and Veronica have got into the main truck, they free Eric, and they all sneak back onto this camper, which is right in front of the main bad guys, because they're actually looking at it and they're paying attention to it. Technically, they're focused on the front grill because he's fixing something because it won't start. But when this guy gets back into the camper, he just looks behind him and like 3 thumbs all come up out of the darkness to say, hey, we're all back. Let's go.
Yep.
And I'm like, how did you get back out of the car? Like, I can't believe you pulled this stealth move off.
Yeah, I can fully, because they at one point show the van going behind a couple other trucks as he's like pulling in, and I'm like, okay, that's where they jumped off. I can understand that. The fact that they are on high alert and know that it's a trap, and yet nobody thinks to check on the only reason he would be coming back here at all, that's stupid.
Yeah,
that's just straight up plot hole.
Not only that, they also left their briefcase of diamonds in there with Eric, which they also take. So they've got Eric, they've got the diamonds, and they set up a grenade trap. So a bunch of grenades go off when one of the Universal Soldiers goes in to check to see, Eric's gone. It's like, what about the diamonds? And then the Universal Soldier just goes, grenades, boom. And like, and I'm like, okay, this is the first time I felt like you almost had an action scene. It was basically just some grenades going off, but at least there was some fire. There was some pyrotechnics. Yeah. So that's something.
It was literally one stunt guy jumping out of a trailer that has some fire coming out of it. And then you see Gary Busey and co. in a different shot just going, oh, like, it's feasibly reacting to the explosion, but definitely shot with just some bright lights on them.
Yeah. So, like, this is the closest we've got to actually having an action scene, and it's still not quite counting, to be honest, but basically, they're all just sort of watching this from the camper as they drive away, like, happy with their handiwork, but they're still close enough that they can get shot at, so immediately some soldiers just start shooting at them, and they get away, but there's tons of bullet holes in the back. And all I could think was, is this guy driving, I'm like, ask for more than 100, buddy. Like, like you were put into, like,
absolutely.
Given how trigger happy Gary Busey's been all movie, I feel like he is so lucky that he didn't just get shot on the spot.
But if he did, he'd get the single tear.
Yeah.
What a waste of life.
No, because he's not like I think Busey was upset because he was shooting the steam, people who were good for the country, who had served their time, who had put in the work. This guy's just a...
Yeah, he's a guitarist. Who cares about him?
Yeah, he's a filthy hitchhiker. Yeah.
Also, I think I don't know if you mentioned, but when we killed the terrorists, we did get the third little joke there of the running gag of, all right, put these guys on ice, and then he stops and he's like, actually, you know what? They're probably not going to be good. Just bury them. Whatever.
Which, okay, that feels weird. That's 3 useful bodies right there. What are you doing?
But they're terrorists, Pete. He doesn't want that in his program.
Sure. So basically, they get to like like a big country bar type place. They don't go in first. They're outside, and the two guys are heating up. Which, by the way, the fact that Eric is also heating up suggests that he is also reincarnated.
Right. Look, if there's one thing I remember from the Universal Soldier, the first movie, is how important it is to stay cool. Like, that was half the movie, was just them saying, like, we got to get ice. We got to cool you down. There's a big deal. We can't let you overheat. This is like the second time this has come up at all. And it's as simple as, oh, there's a beer truck over there. Let's just go sit in there and have some beers. Like, I remember them having to do an entire ice bath routine before. I remember them having trouble finding cooling stuff. But here it's just like, that's probably cold enough. Whatever.
I mean, they start with that in this movie. Luke starts his first scenes in, like, after, not counting the recap stuff, but he's in, like, the bathtub with the ice. Which, by the way, there's a really bad line here where they're doing the kissing, and he sort of like maybe kisses a bit too much, and she's like, whoa, Casanova, cool down or you'll overheat. And he sort of looks at his like sensor and his wrist, and she's like, it's a figure of speech, Luke. And I'm like, that's not a saying. No one says that.
It's not. I said the exact same thing. She was like, it's a figure of speech. I'm like, nope. Don't know where you're getting that from. It has never been a figure of speech.
If anything, in this context, it actually makes more sense to just be literal, because he can overheat. It's literally a thing that he does.
Or better yet, just say like, whoa, hold on there. Might be getting a bit too hot. Like something like that. That could work. But you may overheat is not a way of saying you're getting horny.
So, yes. Anyways, yeah, so they sit in the back of this beer truck, which is cooled for the beer. And again, maybe this is supposed to be a hint that he's starting to remember things, but this really annoyed me. He's not supposed to remember Veronica yet, still. And they do a joke here where Eric goes to, like, get the bottle cap off, and he sort of does a thing where he hits it off like a metal bit of the truck, right? As you'd expect. And then Luke just twists it off. And Eric's like, whoa, how did you do that? He's like, it's a twist off. And clearly that wasn't a thing in the 50s, last time Eric had a beer. And I thought, but wait a minute, he's not supposed to have his memories. Why does he know how beer caps come off?
Yeah, it's one of those weird things when you get down to like the memory erasing goo of how does it erase memories? Like, obviously, he still remembers motor functions. He still remembers like training of being a soldier. So, like, to some extent, he keeps something. Maybe it's like instinct. Maybe that part of the brain is fine. But other stuff is clearly left still intact, and it's just kind of hand wavy of like, whatever we need.
Yeah. So Veronica comes back. They're not there. She goes into the big line dancing. It's a big sort of bar with like a restaurant up on an upper floor, the balcony, just to set the scene a little bit. And she comes in, and from the she's worried at first, but she sees them over at the pool table bonding as brothers, and she just looks lovingly like, oh, they're brothers, they're bonding. Oh, this is so sweet. I'm going to give them their time. I'm going to go and do something else, which actually led to like my favorite second funny moment. So my first favorite funny moment was Busey at the start with killing the soldiers, because I thought that was hilarious. Yeah. The second one is him. She's in the women's bathroom at the mirror doing whatever, and Busey just sort of like sneaks up behind her and grabs her with his head over her shoulder, right in the mirror, and being like, "Tonight you're going to be my girl." And I'm like, this is like amazing horror movie stuff. Gary Busey sneaking up behind a woman in the bathroom and say, "You're going to be my girl tonight." Is the stuff of nightmares, and I love it.
I would be like, okay, say this were like a unisex bathroom sort of thing, just one person per. I'd be like, okay, I could accept that. I could accept that it's like, Busey was here waiting. But how long was he camping out in the women's restroom to be able to pull this off? Because it is not like, oh, he opens the door, sees her, and bum rushes her. Like, he comes out of nowhere and gets her.
He's like, she's got to piss sometime. I'll be waiting. Yeah.
This is actually the fourth girl he's done that to, and every time he's like, oh, sorry, wrong one. Continue your business. And
it's so weird as well, because like, up until this point, he's not shown a single shred of like his attitude up until now is just kill her on sight. Like, he isn't like, but all of a sudden he's like, oh no, I'm going to be a perv and I'm going to like have my fun before she gets killed. Like, why all of a sudden? Like, I guess he's just in a mood.
Well, each time, we mentioned Burt Reynolds is this. Every once in a while, he'll be on the phone with Gary Busey, and Busey is just reporting what's going on, how things are going. And every time that things go wrong, he blames it on her. He says, like, oh, we got a problem, 5'7" and blonde, but don't worry, we'll take care of her. So once things go wrong the second time here, once the whole grenade thing and they get away on the camper happens, the same call happens. He calls in and says, oh, she's still around. She's still causing problems. So I think it's supposed to be a thing of he's finally just reached his desperation with the fact of this girl keeps causing problems, despite the fact that she is clearly not the one who should be paid attention to here. Like, it's Luke and Eric that are causing most of these issues.
Yeah. And Luke and Eric are busy bonding. Eric's trying to teach him how to play pool. He's not quite getting it. And then a waitress thinks they might be gay because they're hugging, and they say, no, we're brothers. And then Eric sees her ass and is like, oh, I'm hollering right now. And then tries to teach Luke how to howl because he's horny.
Awoo. Ow.
And then then the bad guys show up and shooting happens, and almost immediately Eric gets shot like 3 times in the chest and goes down.
He like gets in front of Luke, pulls out a pistol to shoot this guy. Of course, being a Unisol, it doesn't matter. So he just returns fire, and then Eric just goes down, and that's it. And again, at this point in the movie, because he's had to cool, because we thought he's been through all this, I don't know about you, but my first reaction is, oh, okay, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he may be out of commission right now, but like, he'll get back up. He'll be fine.
Yeah, and then basically what happens from here is that one of the Universal Soldiers, who, by the way, the rest of them haven't been characters in this, they're just there. They're just around in the uniforms. But one of them's treated like now all of a sudden he's the main one that Luke's going to fight. So we get a really crappy version of the fight from the first movie with the cheesy one-liner. He doesn't kick him onto the farm equipment, of course, but he kicks him into like a trash compactor or something. It says, time to take out the trash, and kicks him. And it's just a really shitty version of what happened in the first one. What's really weird to me about this, though, is that it actually intercuts with Veronica fighting Gary Busey on her own, and her fight is way more interesting.
I don't know if I'd say interesting, but definitely more entertaining. Is that she's got like a hockey stick, and she's just checking this guy across the face over and over again.
Well, do you know what it is? It's because there's the fight with Luke is supposed to be, hey, these are like badasses fighting. It's meant to be like the end of the first movie. This is like two people at the top of their game. It's meant to be impressive, and it's just not. So it's really depressing. But when it comes back to her beating off pervert Gary Busey with a stick, it's like this feels more raw and realistic in a weird way. And then she eventually hits him off the balcony and he goes seemingly to his death, although it turns out he's not dead for one brief moment later where he comes running at them like a madman and Luke just shoots him and kills him, and it's like, okay, what were you hoping to accomplish, Busey?
I love that moment so much because he just comes out like a man possessed. He's like, rah! And they just like unload 3 bullets in him and he drops. He had no plan, but he was all emotion right then. That's the part that as much as the bathroom scene, like, gave me a chuckle, that him charging in like a bear and just yelling at them, that's the part that I thought was making you laugh as well.
No, it was the bathroom scene that got me, but I did appreciate him running at them like a nut job. Yeah, and that's more, I mean, all a couple of things that get tacked on here at the end. That's pretty much the story done, other than what we already talked about, which is I'll get him back up, and Veronica's like, no, he didn't take to the treatment, Luke. He's gone for good.
Yeah, and then he's like, again, not knowing anything about how to bring people back except for spray the magic mist on them. So he tries spraying the mist, and she's like, no, that's not going to work. He's like, okay, I'll bring him back another way. And he leans down and goes, knock, knock. And I'm like, what the hell is... Like, clearly we know the knock, knock bit that was set up before at the beginning of the movie, but like, what is the follow-up here? And he's like, he's not answering. He's not saying who's there. And she's like, what are you... And he justifies this by saying, you said before, laughter is life. I'm trying to make him laugh so he'll be alive. And she goes, oh, sweetie, no. That's not how that works.
This might be the most like pathetic attempt of setup and payoff I've ever seen in a movie.
Yep.
The way this knock knock thing comes back round in this moment. It'd be kind of close because there's a lot of scenes early on at the farmhouse with these parents, which notably the actress who plays the mum is called Barbara Gordon. Just going to mention that because it's kind of interesting as a DC Comics fan.
Yeah.
But you know, there was.
I thought the most interesting was that the Dolph Lundgren stand-in was Andrew Jackson, famed president.
I did not know that was a president. So
yeah,
fair enough.
He's the one who really hated the Indians. So cool guy, apparently. Okay.
Anyway, so the final couple scenes. One, we finally get a reveal of Burt Reynolds' face as he's telling the doctor, oh, no, don't worry, I'll get you the money to kickstart or restart this program. We're going to have a proper Universal Soldier thing. And it reveals at the end of the scene, the camera goes down and it says that he's the deputy director of the CIA. So he's deep inside the government. And all I could think was, this is how you got Burt Reynolds. You told him all of his scenes would take place in one room. He can do all of his scenes for both movies in like a day, maybe 2 days tops. And that's it. He's done. He can go home.
I saw on here, let me see if I can find it here. Brothers in Arms and Unfinished Business were primarily shot in Ontario over 42 days. And it wrapped up in like mid-December. And then the second sentence is, Reynolds joined the rest of the crew in early December. So he showed up for like a week and a half of filming max.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing at the end, I'd forgotten that they even still had the diamonds because it's not even like Busey makes a big deal of like, oh, I'm going to get them because I want my diamonds. Like they stole my money. Like, because that would sound like it is supposed to be the driving force of the plot for the back chunk of the movie is him wanting his money back. But it's just such an afterthought, you forget about it. And there's just this, the very last scene of the movie is that there's some like old vets like selling stuff to like make a living on the street. Like they've just got like a little table and they're selling like shirts and stuff. And
they got a sign that says, Vietnam vets, don't forget about us.
Yeah, and then the guy looks down and there's a briefcase full of diamonds. With a
note that says, we didn't forget about you.
And the movie just starts rolling credits as like our main two characters are walking off. She's still technically a wanted fugitive, by the way. Just
yeah. Also, like they go there. It's a graveyard. They're at Arlington or whatever. They're at
Oh yes,
like a
yes.
decently sized soldier graveyard. And instead of going to his brother's grave, which would make sense because he thinks his brother is dead, he's instead at his own grave because
No,
am I alive?
No, they went to Eric's grave because
Did they go?
I remember seeing the year being 1959. That's why I brought it up, or 58, 58 or 59, whatever year.
The
it was.
grave I looked at, the grave I remember them showing definitely said Luke on there. Oh, they're buried next to each other. Okay.
Well, to be fair,
never
that
mind.
makes sense.
Yeah, that does. I just I looked at the Luke bit and then I just kind of like glossed
No,
out.
they
I was
definitely
like,
showed
are we
Eric's
done yet?
grave. That's why they were
Fair
there, because he puts a flower on Eric's grave.
Okay. I didn't realize they were buried next to each other.
Well, they're not buried technically.
Yeah. They got markers. That's all that matters.
Yes. I mean, first of all, Luke's standing right there, and I doubt Eric get put in this grave. His body's probably, I don't know, buried out back of the farmhouse or something.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, because obviously the setup for the movie is that he's going to be resurrected
That's
in the
true.
Unisol program. So he
That's true.
probably was picked up there by them.
Yeah. So yes, this was all set up so that the brother could be a villain in the next one, basically.
Yep.
And that's it. That's Universal Soldier 2. It's a big fat nothing. It honestly, you could condense everything that happens into this movie to at least half the runtime, because like I said, the first half is basically just them trying to like write away everything that was accomplished at the end of the first movie. So in some cases by just ignoring it, but by some other cases actually spending time doing the plot of, no, he went back to them, they erased his memory, right, we're back to square one.
Yep.
Let's go from here. We could have saved so much time by just not doing.
Yeah. If you told me that Universal Soldier 1 was required viewing going into this, you could easily chop out half an hour of this movie. Like, no problem whatsoever.
Yep. No. I have nothing to add. Honestly, I don't know what else to say about this. It's a dull, plodding movie. It has that problem that all directed TV or most directed TV and directed video movies have, which is they clearly are just making content for content. So this is very much the predecessor to like just making a show for Netflix because they want to have something else there to pad their numbers. This is what this feels like to me. It just feels like content for content's sake, and there's not a single spark of an idea or a sense of like having a story to tell with momentum or where it's going. It feels like 90% of the scenes are just how can we pad this single plot beat out to kill 10 minutes instead of 1 minute. And that's what a lot of it feels. There's so much, like we didn't even mention the rest of them, but there's like 5 or 6 scenes in this movie where a song will start playing and it'll do the music video cuts of like whatever's happening. You know, whether it's you know, the I don't know, when Luke first loses his memory or his brother wakes up or whatever. There's like several. I can't even remember what they all were, but there's just tons of those moments throughout the movie.
It's because none of them matter. None of them are important to like the biggest, most egregious example is she gets to Chicago as Luke gets off the train, and there is at least a full minute of just them walking out of the train station, him getting into a car, and her following. And it takes that long to make that sequence happen. And I don't get it. I have no idea what we are supposed to get across them on that, because the purpose of the scene in any other context, if it was shot like that, is this is the first time she's seeing this guy. And so we're really driving home. This is what he looks like. This is like how we're going to follow him. And so we're making sure the audience follows him.
What they're going for is that she's in shock because it looks like he's back with the bad guys. It's meant to be is he betraying us or is he giving himself up for some reason? Like that's what the moment's supposed to be, but it's been so poorly set up and like it doesn't work. It
Again,
just falls flat.
With any sort of knowledge of the first movie, she should know that, like, oh, they have this mind control thing going on. And so if it looks like he's being controlled, odds are he's not.
No, but that's the thing, though. This whole thing of like turning on a button to make him just go back to them was not a thing in the first movie. So she doesn't know any of that. None of us do.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the button thing, but it was the programming. The idea that, like, you know, he was subjected to this crazy stuff, and he's only just shaking it off like 2 days ago.
I don't know. It's it's a rough time. I'm not.
It is.
Like, it sucks that we had to waste an episode of the show on this. It sucks that we're going to have to do another one on the third movie. But hey, it's done now. What was your scene of the movie? Which Gary Busey scene are you picking?
I was gonna say, which Busey scene do I pick? I think I gotta give it to opening scene. Single tear rolling down the face. Not like the rest of the scene is crazy enough, and it gave me hope for Gary Busey's character of like these three soldiers come in, he shoots them all dead, and he's just gonna be that level of villainous crazy. They never quite got back up to that again. They never made it seem like he was actually that insane.
Because he spends most of the time after that just on the phone.
Yeah, exactly. He's a bureaucrat more than he is a villain. But the single tear is that little extra addition that pushes it over the level of, boy, that was pointless, to, oh, that was stupid crazy the way that worked out. So I'll give it to there. Yeah,
I think I'm going to go with the bathroom scene. And I think the reason why I'm picking that over the other scene is just purely because by this point I'd lost all hope, and I was just impressed that even anything made me laugh at that point because I was just so out of it and depressed. So that's what I'm picking. MVP, it's obviously Gary Busey, right?
I think an argument, if you're trying to play it seriously, could be made to the actor who plays Eric, just because he's the only one who seems like he's doing even a halfway decent acting job here. But yeah, it's got to be Busey because he's just the most fun.
Yeah, I mean, Veronica's okay. Like, the actress playing Veronica's,
she's just not given anything.
Yeah, but she's not like I think the actor playing Luke, the actor playing there's a lot of characters in this who are actively deterrents to what's going on. And I feel like it's not even that the actor playing Luke is necessarily bad, because I've seen him pop up in sitcoms and stuff, and he's perfectly fine. I think it's just like he's told to act robotic, so he acts robotic, but it's way more than what the character's supposed to be. So it doesn't work. I don't know. Like, I think I have to go with Busey because he's the only thing that made me perk up the whole movie. But I can see the argument. I think the problem with the brother, though, is like he just acts like such a normal guy once he's woken up. I'm like, wait, you're not phased at all that you've been in cryosleep for... Like, because it's not like cryosleep's a normal thing you expect to exist in this world either, right? Yeah. So that's number one. But number two is the fact that technically you died and you're back, or did you? As we have questioned throughout this review.
I will not say that he's not a poorly written character, because he's just as poorly written as any other character in this movie. But I think that the actor is the one that's managing to pull off the bit of likability there that no one else is able to accomplish.
I guess.
But again, still Busey, like long shot.
Yeah. Busey's the chaotic element. I'm a little bit worried about the third one not having Busey to give it some space.
I mean, I'm gonna try to hope that Burt Reynolds can pull something out of his ass, but it's not looking good.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, what are you rating Universal Soldier 2: Brothers in Arms?
Well, the question is, how far below the 5 mark do I want to go here? Looking at otherwise comparison points here, I mean, we haven't done a lot of like straight to TV stuff on this. We've done a whole bunch of like big budget stuff that failed so badly that it didn't really work out, but straight to TV, not really. I think it feels to me like a 2. I can't explain why. It just like a 5 would be something that I felt like, even taking into account its budget, even taking into account that it was made for TV, I think there's still a way it gets to a 5. I think that's still possible for that. But this had just no respect for the source material to begin with. It felt like a soulless cash-in where, again, like you said, it felt like a Netflix was just, we got the rights, let's throw something together real quick. And on top of it, the story, the pacing, it's just nonsensical. It doesn't work in any sort of action sense either. Just nothing is holding up going down the checklist of what needed to come out of a sequel to Universal Soldier. So the only positives I can really give it are it kind of made me laugh at points, and technically some of the special effects were okay. They didn't overextend themselves and like make it look like crap.
Yeah, because they avoided doing action scenes. That's how they did that.
Exactly. It's like, look, we know we have a bad budget. We're not going to try to pretend that we're something bigger than we're not. So it gets a 2, but that is not saying much for it.
Yeah, 2 sounds about right to me, just because, yeah, there's obviously the complete bottom of the barrel, but it's horribly directed, the camera work is annoying, there's lots of montages or moments that are made out to be emotional with songs that aren't, and haven't earned any of those feelings, so they're just there for padding. It actively contradicts the first movie and itself, whilst also trying to assume that you know things from the first movie. It really is a mess in just about every possible way, and a pretty dull and uninteresting mess at that. It's not like it's doing crazy things that are at least funny, for the most part. 1 or 2 Gary Busey scenes notwithstanding. So, yeah, 2 out of 10. I agree with that rating. So,
all right.
There you go. So we'll be back for the 3rd one in a few months. I don't want to leave it too long because I will forget everything.
I don't think it's gonna matter, Pete. I don't think a goddamn piece of it, because we're gonna get a recap scene. I guarantee you.
Probably. Previously on Universal Soldier.
Wooden acting.
So yeah, next up we've got They Clone Tyrone, which was a vote winner. That's going to be the next episode of the show, so hopefully that sounds like a good time. Check out Airport Season over on the Collector's Cut, which is the other show we do where we work through franchises or, you know, sets of movies in different ways. But that's what's going on there. We did Die Hard Season over the Christmas period into the new year, so, you know, lots of seasons to check out of that. But of course, the main thing to tell you about here is Patreon. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can get bonus shows from me and David, such as the Criterion Cut. Sorry. Where we do movies from the Criterion Collection, and then extra reels where we do some of the worst things ever made. A lot of which are in the same caliber as this, although some of them are actually more entertaining than this, because they're at least funny bad.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, though.
I'm trying to think if my rating would change if it were on the extra reels scale. I don't think it would.
No, I don't think so.
It'd still be around there, yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah. But there you go. That's the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us.
Pete, Pete, I have homework.
Oh, homework. Oh, yeah, David's got homework. I forgot.
God, I don't want to be the guy who reminds the teacher, but, like, I got to get this done.
Oh, yes. What was your homework movie? Yes, a movie that David went and watched that was on the show before he joined.
Yes, yeah, I'll keep it brief. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I'm trying to get done things from the decade, so I went back and did Lightyear.
Oh, okay. Yeah, to be honest, I think the reason why I forgot there was homework is because, well, this is still the Atomic Cinema Experiment. In my head, it was extra reels the entire time.
Yeah,
so
I could tell.
On you go.
Yeah, no, Lightyear, for anyone who doesn't know, animated movie, Pixar. It's a spin-off of Toy Story that is supposed to be the actual movie that Buzz Lightyear, the toy, came from.
It's the movie that Andy saw as a kid that made him want a Buzz Lightyear figure. Exactly,
which is a very progressive movie for 1995. I'll tell you that much now. Yeah, it's okay. It's got some weird little like time playings that it goes with, which scores major points in my book. I like the way that it sort of explores time dilation as a plot element and makes it like work for character development. That's very early on in the movie. And then from that point on, it's paint by numbers. You can predict exactly where the characters are going to go with it. It's a thing where Buzz works alone and he has to decide like, oh, you know, how do I work with a team? How am I able to work together with these people? And it's not a bad movie, but I think it does come across as sort of just, hey, we need something to fill out this year's slot, and we've had this idea bumping around for a while. I will say they do have a changing aspect ratio, which obviously were the IMAX scenes, and I can imagine it looking very good in IMAX. I think visually there's a lot of interesting sequences in this that would look very good on the big screen.
Yeah, just to clarify, you won't always get the changing aspect ratio. Just the version you were watching specifically chose to have the alternate. Okay.
I did Disney Plus,
because when I saw this in theaters, there was no alternate aspect ratios. It was just the one ratio the whole time.
Yeah, I guess I got the IMAX cut on Disney Plus then.
It's kind of like how if you watch The Dark Knight on the physical formats, you get the IMAX ratio switching for some scenes, but you don't if you bought it digitally. So.
Fair enough. But yeah, I can definitely see how that would be very intriguing on a big screen. Unfortunately, I literally watched on my phone, so didn't quite get that. But yeah, no, it's an okay movie. I think that it is intriguing enough for people who are into Pixar, and I think that there is a little bit there for sci-fi fans, but for the most part, it does just kind of feel like content rather than a film.
Yeah, I also, just on a conceptual level, I felt like, the movie that made Buzz Lightyear a star in the Toy Story universe, I thought was going to be more of like he's going around space doing, different planets and stuff. And the movie's whole plot's about how they're trapped on one planet and they're trying to get off of it. And I was like, that's a weird, that's just the opposite of what I thought Buzz Lightyear would be. But
yeah, I was, if they really would look, I think they were more concerned with trying to make a good modern movie. But if I really wanted them to cash in on that idea of Andy saw this, I wanted to be one of those 80s to 90s movies where they are just there to sell toys. Like, there are a few sequences in this where it feels like they're cashing in on that, like when he gets like the laser wrist thing or they show off the wings. But I wanted the whole movie to be that. I wanted it to be Transformers level, like not Michael Bay, but like the actual 80s cartoon Transformers of, we are here to sell you this toy. Go out, buy it now.
Yeah, no. All right, well, there you go. You rating it?
Yeah, I'd say it's above average, but not anything fantastic. I'll go 6.5.
Sounds about fair. All right, well, there you go. That's the show, everyone. I prematurely tried to wrap it up earlier. So I can finally go pee now, so that's great. So thank you for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time. Keep watching science fiction and computer and salsa.